Today we're back installing the guttering around my porch. I picked up this extra bracket for the guttering, and now I need to work out how to install it. I can see it has space for 3 screws, and I want to make sure it's at the right height. The one on the left was already there from before, so I'm using that as a guide to work out where it should be. But the trouble is, the one on the left is ever so slightly a different shape. I'm butting this piece right up against the top, just like the piece on the left, but if they are in fact different shapes, I'm a bit worried they might be at different heights. Because of this, I unscrewed the one on the left to compare it to the one on the right and see if they were sitting at the same height. And they were, so I just decided to screw it back in to the same place as it was before. I realised only at this point that I was going to need more than one bracket, since the guttering will also be going around the corner, and that too needs to be supported. But I thought I'd carry on with what I do have, and this section at least could be fit. I tried to slide this piece of guttering back in as I had originally taken that first piece out, but it didn't quite fit the same way that it did before. This piece of guttering that I have is ever so slightly larger than the piece that I took down. Probably only by 1 millimetre, but that's enough to make that left clip not fit. I wanted to make sure that it was roughly the right length before I committed to clipping anything in place. So I attached the next section. Fortunately, there was this hanging basket there, so I was able to rest the guttering in place even without the clips. And once I saw for the first time roughly what it was going to look like, I was delighted. Look at my face. It's going to look so much tidier than what I had before, and I'm really pleased that I decided to do this. The next challenge was working out where the downpipe needed to go. I don't know this yet, but I've actually put it on the wrong way. And when I tried to add the clips that will secure it to the wall, they were too far away. I'll show you later what I did to resolve that. But before then, I needed to take apart a couple of these smaller bits to use these to navigate the water into the water barrel. When I installed this guttering, I glued this guttering together to make sure that it didn't fall apart, which was great because it didn't fall apart, it was very secure. And it's also giving me trouble now because it was great and it was secure. But as you saw, I used the technique of kicking it with your foot until it comes apart. I added this piece with the exit facing down so that gravity would take the water into the water barrel. These are the clips that I took off of the downpipe in its position that it was before. I'll be reusing these in the new location. This was the point when I realised that I had put the downpipe on incorrectly. I popped this clip onto the front and it was miles away from the wall. So I had to take it apart and turn it around. I should also share, you can't see this on screen, but I'm standing on a little pair of steps. And this little pair of steps is not very close to the wall because the water barrel is in the way. So I'm having to lean quite far to be able to access what I'm doing, which isn't ideal. You should really be able to reach your work without leaning too far. This is especially important if you're standing on tall ladders. You move the ladder, not yourself. But this water barrel was almost completely full, so it wasn't very practical to be able to move it. That's me desperately searching for my pen now that I found the right location for this clip. This pen that I've got is simply a Sharpie, it's a permanent marker, and I'm just going to mark in the holes where I need to drill. I find this to be one of the fastest ways to mark where I need to drill, but it definitely does ruin the Sharpie. What are you doing with that right leg? Yeah, you guessed it, I'm standing partly on my windowsill, partly on the step. This is definitely one of those don't do as I do type things. I spent a bit of time working out what I thought looked straight, lining it up with the bricks on the porch. I felt like this seemed like a fairly foolproof way of making sure that it looked good and didn't feel the need to use a level measure. But it's only really now that I'm sat here recording this voiceover that I do wonder whether it is angled down enough for gravity to take the water down the pipe. Well, I guess we'll find out the next time it rains. I'll keep you updated. I started to try and drill the holes, but my drill bit was only about 3 millimeters in before I realised that my battery in my drill had completely run out. I was so gutted because all I had to do to finish this today was to just drill a couple of holes. There's nothing worse than when you're tantalisingly close to finishing a job and realise you've not got all the pieces you need, or there's one thing stopping it from being done. So I started packing up, ready to finish this job tomorrow. But then I remembered that I have a corded masonry drill. I haven't used this for years and years. Ever since I got my combi drill, which I tend to use for most things now. But because I haven't used it for so long, I forgot just how good a masonry drill is, specifically for masonry jobs. A combi drill does masonry, it does it reasonably well. It doesn't do it as well as a masonry drill. It took seconds to drill through this brick, and I stuck the plugs straight in. By the time I came to drilling these holes, it was getting quite close to about 9 o'clock, which is a little bit later than I would normally use power tools. But since I live on a main road, it's still very active at this time, and to be honest, I doubt anybody heard. I positioned the clips in the right place, added the screws, and screwed them in. I added the second clip to the bottom of the downpipe. In yesterday's video, I couldn't manage to get it out of the wall. I thought perhaps the drill bit was skipping in the screw, but it was actually because the battery was so low it didn't have enough power to turn it. I got a hand tool, a screwdriver, and it came right out. At a later time, I will come back and fill in the holes that were left by removing these brackets from the other part of the wall. By installing these two brackets, I successfully managed to keep this part of the guttering in place. And whilst it would be a good idea for me to still pick up 2 additional brackets to keep that bit on the side secure to the wall, it ended up being stable enough for now that I could just leave it as it is. I very gently wiggled the guttering a tiny bit further right. This was to ensure that the entire length of the pipe was the same distance from the wall. Once I've added some clips, it would do this naturally, but at the moment I needed to make sure it was in the right place. And there we have the finished look. I'm kind of blown away by how much better it looks. What do you think? Tell me in the comments. And thank you to the people who suggested that I could do it this way and that it would look a little bit better. You were correct. I've never been a huge fan of having that downpipe coming down directly next to my doorbell. And I really enjoyed learning how to do guttering. I guess only time will tell if I have angled it down enough for gravity to take the water into the water butt. But if I haven't, that's okay, because I'm sure I will find a way to fix it. This is the finished result from the side. Oh, I have an exciting idea. Maybe I could put a marble into the gutter to see if it rolls down into the water barrel. Now that I've moved this lovely little spot here has been made available for my parcel box. I'm excited about the prospect of having it put back up. As a reminder, this is what it looked like before. And this is what it looks like after. The parts for this DIY were less than £15. Do you think it was worth it? And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel.